Good afternoon, everyone. Hello, Bruce. Welcome. We're going to talk about fundraising in the age of Trump. So as we get
if nothing else, it's a catchy title, right?
That's what we figured. Both Bruce and I are, we live in New York City, so we'll give you that perspective. Also, Bruce and I, we co-professor together at Yeshiva University Sim School of Business. So it's great to see you on a Monday and not a Tuesday. But Bruce and I hear each other speak all the time. So I'll just plant the seed. We're going to have a couple of questions together, and then we'd really like to hear from the audience, maybe some questions about the fundraising environment in New York or the States. But as we get started, Bruce, why don't you tell us about your fund?
Sure. Thanks, Moshe. It's great to be here. Maybe just by a show of hands from the folks in the room, how many of you are entrepreneurs and have either raised venture or are planning to raise some venture? Or I recognize that guy. Alone is a glutton for punishment. I've invested in 3 of his companies, so it's good to see you. Excuse me. So I'm with Blumberg Capital, and actually Moshe and I are also professors, as he mentioned, together, and run Maccabee Ventures and teach together at Yeshiva University in our undergrad. But my day job at Blumberg Capital, we're currently investing out of our 5th fund. It's a $225 million early stage venture fund. 2 years ago, we launched our first venture growth fund, a later stage venture fund as well. Ron, I enjoyed your words. Good luck. And so I've had the privilege of investing for the last 30 years in early and late stage technology, North America and Israel. We were early investors out of Israel in companies, a few companies you might have heard of, like Checkpoint Software, DSP Group, EFI, Creo. More recently, last year, we sold a fintech company, Finaro, for $1 billion. We were seed investors in Double Verify in the digital media space here out of Israel as well. They went public and were worth $10 billion. And dozens of other companies, I think Yotpo, BioCatch, Funbox, that are all sort of pre-IPO. So I would say thank you to the entrepreneurship here in the room. We love Israel. We love the entrepreneurship in Israel. On a personal note, I was here on October 7th, back 2 years ago, stayed for a few weeks to try and help support some of our portfolio companies and family. I have 10 of my nephews are serving across the Shomron, Gaza, Lebanon, and other places that I'm not allowed to know where. And I could speak for Moshe and I, we are here to continue to support Israel. It's the startup nation, and I think the future is very bright. From the prior panel, I think $1 trillion is aspirational. I like that. I think we like to see some decacorns. There have been unicorns, but we hope there's going to be some decacorns in the future, and hopefully that'll be some of you here in this room. So thank you.
And Maccabee Ventures is an early stage fund, pre-seed and seed. We bridge between New York and Israel. We have the cultural competence for here and the network for there. And we pride ourselves on being value add. Some of the Israeli companies in our portfolio, Elios, Agora, Giga.
Fungard. We share Fungard.
Fungard, I'm sorry. So just getting to our topic, we had Trump elected as president. We had all these ideas of what that would mean to the fundraising environment, both for VCs as well as for startups. Why don't you maybe start off with some macro numbers, some macro perspective on what you've seen sort of in the market from that vantage point?
Well, I think the prior panelist, Lishi, I don't know if she's still in the room, but mentioned, I guess, some of the positives in terms of cyber, which personally I think, again, we love cybersecurity, but it's quite niche. So there tends to be fewer buyers. There tends to be smaller. If you look at health tech, fintech, supply chain, logistic, these are $1 trillion markets. We invested in a healthcare company out of the US. I mean, healthcare is 20% of gross domestic product. So tremendous opportunity. I think obviously there's been this phenomenal transformation going on with artificial intelligence. Literally, you can't turn a newspaper page or watch a news on TV. Every second they're asking, how is AI going to impact X? So the good news is, just this year alone, AI companies have raised over $200 billion. So we're not even done yet. We're almost done, but we're not even done yet. So I think there's just this massive wave that's continuing with Trump in office that's quite positive. And then Moshe and I are based in New York these days. I actually lived and worked in Silicon Valley for 20 years. I've lived and worked here in Tel Aviv as well back in the 90s. But New York raised in 2024 over $30 billion, and about 25% of all startups that are early stage are being funded in the New York ecosystem. There's about 300 plus venture firms in New York City alone. And I think, again, the future remains quite bright. We'll maybe get into some other details. The part of the challenge, I think, for maybe venture as an asset class is over the last few years, interest rates, have been high. There's obviously been a lack of liquidity, but interest rates are coming down, and we think that other macro trends will inure to the benefit of you, the entrepreneurs and venture folks like Moshe and myself and others that are here to continue to invest in early stage startups.
Yeah, I think when Trump came to office, particularly, I think people thought, hearkening back to the last panel, that the IPO world was going to suddenly electrify and M&A as well. And people thought that was going to be a flood. I think that's been a steady stream more than a flood. I think that because of high interest rates also, but I think what's helped, what's maybe masked it, is the incredible bull run of the public markets, which has allowed for money to keep coming into the system, even though liquidity events have been much less.
Just on a regulatory perspective from the Trump administration, this is not really political, but some of you might be familiar with QSBS, Qualified Small Business Stock. The advantage that you have investing in technology startups, if you qualify as a QSBS, and I think this is important maybe for Israeli entrepreneurs to think about, if you can, potentially, we probably see 50% of our companies that are quote unquote Israelis incorporating in the US anyway. And if you can actually incorporate in the US and have, over a certain percentage of your employee base in the US market, you get QSBS benefit, which the first $10 million you basically don't pay taxes on. So it's unlike anything in real estate or other investment opportunities. So the Trump administration is reinvigorating that and other measures, I think, to entice more and more dollars to go into venture and technology investing.
Absolutely. Shifting gears maybe a little bit, we both live in New York, and now we have a new mayor-elect, Mamdani, and it's been interesting. So I speak at a lot of conferences, and especially in New York. And so last week, Shmona Matayim was in town, the association. And I can tell you that everywhere I go, Israelis particularly, are asking, what's that going to look like with Mayor-elect Mamdani? So I wanted to get your opinion. I certainly have mine. We're both community leaders. We both were very involved in the past election. I'd love to get sort of your opinion.
I guess we weren't involved enough.
Clearly not.
What's his name? Mom what? So listen, I don't think people should get caught up on what I view as the noise at the end of the day. Let's put it in perspective. Last week, Moshe and I were in New York, and we sat in the room. We're both chairs of the UJA Wall Street Group. We had 2,500 people in the room, over $1 trillion of investment dollars from the Wall Street folks in the room. So Mamdani, can't even get buses to be free at the end of the day. So I think what he's going to try to do maybe as a mayor-elect, and when he becomes mayor, we'll see. But Wall Street loves technology, and the vast majority of the country in the US love Israel. So you hear the noise because that's noteworthy, that's newsworthy, but that's not the vast majority of the country. I would say, having lived in Silicon Valley, having been a native New Yorker and living back in New York, technology is booming, and New York is open for business and very excited for the Israeli entrepreneurs to be there. So at the end of the day, New York really is, I don't want to say this in an egomaniacal sort of way, but New York is sort of the center of the world. And as I said before, 25% of all startups are getting funded in New York. Last year, 2024, just New York City, $30 billion in venture capital receptivity. something like 25,000 startups are in New York. And you, the people in this room, are a massive contribution to that. In 2024, there's over 20,000 Israelis that are living in New York. And those 20,000 Israelis have started companies that have generated $12 billion in revenue and something like 30,000 jobs for the city of New York. So if you think for a moment, one crazy individual who basically is a Nepo baby who's never done anything, has never had a job, and now is in office for the first time, is going to be able to, transform America or the country or interfere with technology innovation from Israel, I'm not even remotely worried about that.
So I agree.
I was going to say you want to disagree. You could disagree.
No, I agree. I would say though that eyes wide open. So I will say that as you're seeing on the news, folks picketing Park East Synagogue with Nefesh B'Nefesh. And
by the way, the newspapers got all that wrong. By the way, at Park East Synagogue, this is exactly my point. Okay, my brother-in-law was there. If you saw the Jerusalem Post, my brother-in-law was in the Jerusalem Post this past week. I don't mean to interrupt you, but there were about 40 protesters at the end of the day and about 200 anti-protesters. The journalists are all left-leaning. The universities are left-leaning. They misconstrue. It's completely fake news. So at the end of the day, there was a tiny little faction of 24 crazies that were at Park East Synagogue, and they're literally meaningless. They don't have jobs, and they're being paid by, what's his name? By, Soros is paying them $1,500 to show up at a protest. That's what we're talking about. Let's put things in perspective. APAC's was facilitated $20 billion to Israel in 2024. You turn on the news, last night I was watching the news, the military innovation, the defense technology coming out of Israel, every country in the world wants to buy that technology. So I think Israel is very secure. We shouldn't be caught up with a handful of crazies that are on the fringe. And even the protests at Park East Synagogue were completely taken out of context and misconstrued.
I agree, but unfortunately, that's what media is picking up. But I will say, and the reason why I wanted to bring that up is because we need a seat at those tables. In other words, we shouldn't retreat. In fact, we should forge into the bridge, as they say, and that's really important. So, when Israeli entrepreneurs ask me sort of what do we do next? My answer is show up strong, show up prepared, because ultimately in New York, in concert with what Bruce is saying, business leaders know they need to solve problems. And at the end of the day, if you're bringing them solutions, whether you're from Israel or Guam or whatever, it's your solution that's going to matter. And I think that's really important to remember.
And the difference between Guam and Israel is Israel has a track record. Just in New York alone, there's about 30 unicorns founded by Israeli entrepreneurs. We invested in Yotpo, BioCatch, Wiz, Fireblocks, Via. There are dozens of these amazing, unicorns. And my prediction is over the next 10, 20 years, we're going to see decacorns. And like I said, they generated $12 billion in income and revenue for the city of New York, not even the state. So I would say keep doing what you're doing, continue to be resilient, show your grit and resolve, lead with technology. That's how we're differentiated. And when I say we, it's the state of Israel, and by extension, I say, us. And I think we will continue to win in the marketplace and disrupt.
Thank you. Do you think that there's anything now in this environment that entrepreneurs, if you had a tip for Israeli entrepreneurs coming to New York as a VC, or I know you connect them, we both connect them with potential clients, any tips that anything different that you see?
Listen, what I saw post 10/7 was just amazing resilience and fortitude and grit in the people, in the state of Israel. It's honestly, it's incomprehensible and remarkable to me. I think continuing to show that resilience and that grit, leading with data. When you have a startup, it's all about the data. It's talk to prospective customers and partners. It's validate the technology. It's trust and verify. It's over communication, under promise and over deliver in terms of what you're bringing to the table. It's still, whether it's a cyber security company, which obviously kind of Israel as the startup nation started in that. But fast forward today in 2025, already year to date, over 200 Gen AI companies were funded out of Israel. 200 just this year. So the innovation is continuing. I think the metaphor I don't know if we say it as Americans, but maybe I'll channel the Canadians, which, by the way, they're really having anti-Semitic problems. We're doing just fine. Look at Australia and some of these other regions around the world. So New York is a haven still and extremely safe. But I would say the metaphor I was going to say was skate to the puck. Think about where the market is heading over the next 5-10 years. Continue to innovate. I think we're seeing this proliferation of AI and big data that's transforming industries. Again, trillion-dollar industries, whether it's digital healthcare, whether it's financial services, whether it's cybersecurity, supply chain logistics, other areas. And there is a ridiculous amount of thirst and desire for Wall Street in New York, for enterprises out in Silicon Valley to embrace, to acquire, and partner with these opportunities. So I think continue to persist, and the future is very bright.
I agree. I was just at ICHLAV yesterday. I go to all the hospitals who do a lot of healthcare, and the fact that they have 50 data scientists working within the hospital is amazing. That doesn't happen in America. So that was, and so I promised that we would take it to the crowd. We have one more minute. Does anyone have a burning question that they want answered about fundraising or the environment in New York, or anything that's on your mind? One question. Yes, sir.
Hi, Bruce. Hi, Moshe. Thank you for the wonderful ideas. And
I like this part.
So thank you. My question is query. If someone is putting some money and if he didn't get back after some certain periods, so how you recover those money?
So just as a side note, by the way, just to close out Moshe's earlier comment before in terms of Israel as well. Israel has the highest number of AI developers on the planet, more than any other country per capita in the world. So again, the future is bright. To get to your specific question, there's a whole dynamic secondary market which didn't exist 30 some odd years ago when I started in this business. So there's lots of opportunities for liquidity if it's a good, interesting company that people, I remember, Facebook before they IPO'd, they were, basically it was a public company even when it was private. People were making millions of dollars transacting in Facebook stock before they even went public. And that today is more prevalent today with these platforms like Equity Zen and Second Market and dozens of others. I don't know if that answers your question, but I think that's where there's opportunity. I would say, maybe contrary to what I think the earlier panel said before, I think the trend is that companies are staying private much, much longer. There's really no reason necessarily to go public when you can raise billions of dollars in the private markets. And so being subjected to the regulatory, the compliance, the costs, I've gone through the process and sat on companies that were public. It's very, burdened and laden with, challenges in that regard. So there's no reason, going public is just, it's a financing, and you can have liquidity without going public these days. So I think, if you look at Microsoft in 1984, Microsoft went public and raised 50 million and their valuation was sub $1 billion. Fast forward to, companies like today, my God, OpenAI is raising at $500 billion, $50 billion, and they're still private. So 99% of the wealth creation today is happening in the private markets. And so I think that trend will continue, which may be challenging for your dollars being locked. I know we're out of time, so we could talk more offline, and then Moshe could comment or disagree with me.
I generally agree with you in class and in here, but I want to thank you for your time. I want to thank you for being here. Bruce and I are incredibly honored to be here, and we look forward to meeting you all. Thank you.
Thank you.